This book isn't about chasing dream jobs or taking reckless leaps, it's about making thoughtful, creative changes from exactly where you are. Whether you're stuck in a role that doesn't fit, unsure of your next move, or just looking to bring more meaning into your day-to-day, this book gives you the tools to rethink and redesign. With concrete exercises, real-world examples, and a bias toward action, it turns self-reflection into forward motion. What makes it stand out is its optimism without naivety. It meets readers where they are, while challenging them to grow. Ideal for professionals at any stage, career changers, recent grads, or anyone questioning what comes next. If you're ready to stop feeling trapped and start building a work life that actually works, this book is your blueprint. Point 1. Rethinking work and life satisfaction. Most people grow up hearing that if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. It's a comforting thought, but also a limiting one. This idea that work has to be fueled by passion can leave many feeling like they've somehow failed if they don't wake up every morning bursting with excitement. In reality, meaningful work doesn't have to start with passion. It can begin with purpose, evolve through experience, and deepen over time. What matters most is that your work fits into the broader design of a life you find fulfilling. Bill Burnett and Dave Evans propose a different way of thinking about career satisfaction, one rooted in design thinking. Instead of hunting for a dream job that will magically make everything feel right, they encourage people to build a life that works. In this framework, work is a component of a larger system. And like any good design, it's shaped not by sudden inspiration but by a process of observation, iteration, and adjustment. One key shift is learning to approach your current work life with curiosity. Rather than judging your job as good or bad, satisfying or unfulfilling, look at it like a designer would look at a prototype. What's working? What's not? Where do you feel engaged? Where do you feel drained? This isn't about forcing gratitude or settling, it's about gaining clarity. Curiosity allows space for insight. Judgment shuts it down. For example, someone working in customer service might assume their job is meaningless because it doesn't match their dream of becoming a writer. But through a lens of curiosity, they might notice how they enjoy crafting empathetic responses or solving complex problems on the fly. These aren't just tasks, they're signals. They point to underlying strengths and values that can be integrated more intentionally into future work, or even enhanced within the current role. Designing your work life also means making intentional choices, not waiting for passion to strike, but actively experimenting with ways to make your work more aligned with who you are and what you care about. That might look like taking on a new project, starting a side hustle, or simply changing how you show up in meetings. These small shifts, over time, compound into something more meaningful. Ultimately, satisfaction doesn't come from finding the perfect job. It comes from treating your work life as a living design, one you get to shape, refine, and grow alongside. Point 2. Reframing problems that seem stuck. Some problems feel immovable, like no matter how many times you think them through, you end up in the same place. Maybe your boss won't promote you. Maybe your industry is shrinking. Or maybe you're convinced your job is just not what you're meant to do. These situations often feel like brick walls. But what if they're not walls at all, just signs you're asking the wrong question? This is where reframing comes in. Reframing is a design thinking tool that helps you look at problems from a new angle. It's not about wishful thinking or forced optimism. It's about getting unstuck by seeing the real shape of the problem, and your role in shaping a solution. A central concept here is the difference between gravity problems and design problems. Gravity problems are just facts of life. They're not solvable. For example, I don't like that my job doesn't let me retire at 40, isn't a problem you can design your way out of. That's like complaining about gravity. You can't change it. You can only decide how you'll live with it. Design problems, on the other hand, are actionable. They might be messy, but they offer room for movement. For instance, if you're stuck in a role that feels monotonous, that's a potential design problem. You might reframe the issue from, I need a more exciting job, to, how might I add more challenge or variety to my current role? That shift opens up options, volunteering for new projects, developing a new skill, or even renegotiating your responsibilities. One practical way to start reframing is by writing down a stuck thought and then asking, what's the assumption behind this? Or, is this a fact or just the way I've been looking at it? Let's say someone says, I can't start a new career at my age. That's a statement loaded with assumptions. Reframed, it might become, what would starting small in a new field look like for someone with my experience? That question creates room for experimentation and learning. Reframing doesn't make hard things easy, but it often makes them solvable. When you shift your question, you shift your direction. You move from feeling trapped to exploring possibilities. And in a work life that's always evolving, that kind of flexibility isn't just helpful, it's essential. Point 3. Building your way forward. When you're unsure about what's next in your work life, it's easy to get stuck in analysis. People often try to think their way into the right decision. But in design thinking, action comes before answers. Instead of waiting to find the perfect plan, you build your way forward, step by step, through small, intentional experiments. These experiments are called prototypes. In the context of career design, a prototype isn't a full career change or a bold leap into the unknown. It's a low-risk, high-learning activity that gives you real data about a possible direction. For example, if you're curious about switching to UX design, a prototype might be taking a weekend course, interviewing someone in the field, or shadowing a friend at their UX job. Each of these actions costs little but yields valuable insight. Take Sam, a marketing manager who thought he wanted to become a teacher. Instead of quitting his job and enrolling in a graduate program, he prototyped. He volunteered to lead a workshop at a local nonprofit. Then he tutored high school students for a few months. Through those small steps, he learned two things: he loved teaching, but preferred adults over teens. That clarity helped him pivot toward corporate training, a field he hadn't even considered when he first started exploring. What makes prototyping powerful is that it reduces the pressure to get it right. You're not trying to make a perfect choice. You're just testing what feels engaging, energizing, and worth further exploration. You get to see what fits, and what doesn't, without committing to a major shift. To get started, identify a career curiosity and ask, what's the smallest action I can take to learn more about this path? The goal is momentum, not mastery. One conversation can lead to a new insight. One class can clarify your interests. One side project can shift your entire direction. Inertia is one of the biggest barriers to work-life change. Prototyping breaks that inertia. It gets you moving. And once you're in motion, each step brings more information, more confidence, and often, unexpected opportunities. The future of your work life doesn't have to arrive fully formed. You design it by building piece by piece, testing, learning, and adjusting along the way. Point 4. Designing meaningful work. Meaningful work isn't necessarily about saving the world. It's about alignment between what matters to you and what you actually do each day. When your values show up in your work, even in small ways, you feel more connected, motivated, and engaged. The challenge is that most people rarely pause to examine that alignment. The first step in designing meaningful work is getting clear on your values. Not just vague ideals like integrity or success, but lived values, what you consistently prioritize, what you fight for, what makes you proud. For one person, it might be creativity. For another, it might be fairness or learning. Once you name your core values, you can start looking for them, or the lack of them, in your workday. Burnett and Evans recommend a simple but powerful tool, an energy engagement map. For a week or two, track your tasks in real time. After each one, rate how energized or drained you felt, and how engaged or bored you were. You don't need to overanalyze, just take note. At the end, patterns will emerge. You'll see which tasks feed you and which ones flatten you. More importantly, you can start connecting that data to your values. For example, if you notice you feel most alive when mentoring junior colleagues, that could point to a value of growth or contribution. If time spent alone strategizing energizes you, maybe autonomy or problem solving is core to your motivation. These signals help you identify where the meaning lives in your current job, and where it might be missing. The goal isn't to transform every task into a mission. It's to amplify what's already meaningful and expand it. Maybe you volunteer for more mentoring opportunities. Maybe you find a way to reframe routine work through the lens of the value it serves. If service is a key value, even writing a customer FAQ document becomes more than just content creation, it becomes a tool to help others succeed. Designing meaningful work is not about chasing the perfect role. It's about being intentional with the role you have. When you understand what fuels you and where it shows up in your work, you gain the power to shape your experience, not through sweeping changes, but through deliberate, often subtle, design. Ask yourself, what parts of your work give you energy? Where do you feel most like yourself? Start there. That's where meaning begins. Point 5. Dealing with dysfunctional workplaces. Not every workplace is healthy. Some are chaotic, others are toxic. And while a difficult job doesn't necessarily mean you're powerless, staying in a dysfunctional environment can take a toll on your confidence, energy, and sense of self. Recognizing the patterns is the first step toward reclaiming agency, even when change feels out of reach. Dysfunction at work often shows up as persistent breakdowns in communication, unclear expectations, micromanagement, favoritism, or a culture that punishes honesty. These behaviors don't just make collaboration harder, they erode trust. Over time, people begin to second-guess themselves, withdraw, or burn out. One common trap is internalizing the dysfunction, believing that if you were just better, faster, or tougher, things would improve. But in many cases, the problem isn't you. It's the system. In these situations, Burnett and Evans offer a design-oriented approach. You may not be able to fix the whole system, but you can redesign your response to it. Start by observing where the pain points are. Is it one person, a specific dynamic, or the overall culture? What behaviors are triggering stress or disengagement? Writing this down can help you see the problem more clearly and avoid absorbing it as personal failure. From there, you can begin experimenting with boundaries or behavior shifts. For example, if your team regularly schedules last-minute meetings after hours, you might try protecting your calendar and communicating your limits proactively. I'm happy to join any discussions before 5 p.m., but evenings are reserved for family time. These small acts of boundary setting can reduce stress and reinforce your sense of control. Some people find power in initiating small, positive changes, like starting a new process for tracking tasks or suggesting one-on-one check-ins with a manager. Others may choose to shift focus to areas of the job that feel more autonomous or aligned with personal values, creating a buffer against the toxicity. In both cases, the goal isn't to change the entire environment overnight, it's to reclaim a sense of agency in how you move through it. In particularly harmful workplaces, the best strategy may eventually involve planning an exit. But until that's possible, design thinking encourages curiosity over despair. Ask, what can I influence? What do I need to protect? How can I take care of myself while staying effective? You don't have to wait for the culture to change to start making better choices for yourself. Even in dysfunction, you have room to design. Point 6. Redesigning the job you have. You don't always need to leave a job to find a better one. Sometimes, the most powerful shift comes from reimagining the job you already have. This process, known as job crafting, is about adjusting the way you approach your tasks, relationships, and mindset to make your role more meaningful, engaging, and sustainable. Job crafting starts with observation. What parts of your job do you look forward to? Which ones drain your energy? Where do you feel underused or boxed in? Mapping your workday through this lens helps you identify opportunities to make small but strategic adjustments. For instance, a project manager might find their most energizing moments happen during team brainstorming sessions. With that insight, they could advocate to lead more of those sessions or even initiate informal idea labs. One dimension of job crafting is task crafting, tweaking the responsibilities you handle. This doesn't mean ignoring assigned work, but rather negotiating changes where there's flexibility. For example, a customer service rep who enjoys writing might volunteer to help with FAQs or internal training materials. These additional contributions can reshape how the role feels day to day. Another dimension is relational crafting. This focuses on who you interact with and how. Let's say a data analyst works mostly in isolation but craves collaboration. They might schedule regular syncs with cross-functional teams or pair up with a colleague to co-present findings. These adjustments foster connection and often lead to better work outcomes. Mindset crafting is the third layer. This involves shifting the way you interpret your work, not changing what you do, but changing how you think about it. A janitor at a hospital might see themselves not just as someone who cleans floors, but as someone who supports patient recovery by maintaining a safe, sterile environment. That reframing can be just as powerful as a formal promotion. Burnett and Evans also encourage open dialogue with managers. Many supervisors are more open to redesign than employees expect, especially when proposals align with team goals. When discussing role evolution, be specific. Frame your ideas in terms of what you want to try, how it supports the business, and what success might look like. The beauty of job crafting is that it's incremental. You're not waiting for permission to make a big leap, you're making small, intentional moves that add up. Whether you're in retail, tech, education, or administration, the core principle applies. You have more room to shape your role than you think. Use it. Point 7. Knowing when and how to leave. Leaving a job is rarely easy. It can feel like giving up, walking away from progress, or starting over. But in the language of design, quitting isn't failure, it's iteration. When something no longer works, you redesign. That might mean tweaking your role, shifting your mindset, or in some cases, exiting completely. The key is knowing when that time has come and how to do it with intention. There are some reliable signs that a departure may be necessary. Chronic disengagement is one. If you consistently feel depleted rather than challenged, and no amount of reframing or job crafting seems to help, your role may be fundamentally misaligned with your values or strengths. Another signal is when growth flatlines, when you're no longer learning, being challenged, or gaining anything that serves your future self. And sometimes the environment itself becomes unsustainable. If the culture is toxic, leadership is unresponsive, or your well-being is at risk, it may be time to walk away. That said, the decision shouldn't be reactive. Burnett and Evans suggest approaching the exit like a design project. Start by identifying your goals. What do you want more of? Autonomy, creativity, purpose. What kind of environment do you thrive in? What constraints are non-negotiable, such as salary, flexibility, or location? Answering these questions helps clarify what you're leaving for, not just what you're leaving behind. From there, design your exit strategy. This could involve prototyping new directions before making the leap, such as freelancing on the side, informational interviews, or short-term gigs in your area of interest. The goal is to learn about your options and reduce uncertainty, so the transition isn't a blind jump but a guided step. It's also helpful to plan the timing. Consider finances, benefits, team responsibilities, and relationships. If possible, leave on good terms. Design your final weeks to close out projects cleanly, offer support to colleagues, and express appreciation. These choices preserve bridges and affirm your professionalism, regardless of the circumstances. Before making the final call, ask yourself, if I stay, what am I building toward? If I go, what am I making room for? Those aren't easy questions, but they're clarifying ones. The best exits aren't driven by escape, but by intention. They reflect a commitment to designing a work life that continues to evolve, and that fits you better with every version. Point 8. Money, meaning, and measurement. Money and meaning are often seen as competing forces in career decisions. One offers security, the other offers purpose. But in reality, a sustainable work life requires both. The challenge lies in understanding your relationship with money, what truly matters to you, and how to balance trade-offs without falling into traps, like pursuing more income at the expense of fulfillment, or chasing passion while ignoring practical needs. Start by defining what enough means to you. Not in vague terms, but in actual numbers. What do you need to live comfortably, support your responsibilities, and save for the future? What would more money allow you to do? What wouldn't change, even if your income doubled? Getting clear on your financial floor, minimum, and your comfort zone helps ground career choices in reality rather than fear or fantasy. Burnett and Evans encourage a tool called the money meaning matrix, a simple quadrant chart with money on one axis and meaning on the other. Jobs can fall into any of the four categories: high money/high meaning, low money/low meaning, high money/low meaning, and low money/high meaning. Most people ideally want to be in the top right quadrant, but the point isn't to chase perfection. It's to recognize where you currently are and whether the trade-offs make sense for your life stage. For example, someone in a high-paying but unfulfilling role may realize they've slipped into the golden handcuffs, financially comfortable but emotionally stuck. If they're not careful, inertia will keep them in place. The key is to ask whether the money is enabling the life they want, or just delaying a change they need. On the flip side, someone in a deeply meaningful but low-paying role might need to reevaluate sustainability. Are there ways to increase income without abandoning the mission? Can skills be leveraged elsewhere? Measurement also matters. It's easy to evaluate work solely by promotions, raises, or external validation. But fulfillment often comes from intangible progress, growing mastery, deeper relationships, a stronger sense of impact. Burnett and Evans suggest creating personal success metrics. Am I learning? Do I feel respected? Is my work aligned with my values? Tracking these over time offers a fuller picture of career health than a paycheck alone. Money is not the enemy of meaning. But it becomes a problem when it drives choices unconsciously. By defining what's enough, acknowledging your trade-offs, and measuring what truly matters, you create a work life that supports your whole life, not just your bank account. Point 9. Creating a resilient work life. A resilient work life isn't built on certainty, it's built on adaptability. In a world where industries evolve, roles shift, and life priorities change, the most successful careers aren't the ones with a fixed path. They're the ones shaped by people who stay curious, flexible, and willing to iterate. This is the essence of a design mindset, approaching your work life not as a rigid plan, but as a series of prototypes, experiments, and evolving possibilities. One powerful tool Burnett and Evans introduce for cultivating this kind of resilience is the Odyssey Plan. The idea is simple: instead of mapping out a single 5-year plan, create 3 different versions of what your life could look like over that time. One path might be your current trajectory. Another could be a bold shift. A third might explore a long-standing curiosity you've never pursued. Each version includes not just what you'd do for work, but how you'd live, who you'd spend time with, and how you'd measure success. The point isn't to predict the future, it's to remind yourself that there are many possible futures. And that you have agency in shaping them. Consider Lisa, a software developer who created 3 Odyssey plans when she started feeling restless in her role. One kept her in tech but shifted her into product strategy. Another moved her toward teaching coding in underserved communities. The third was completely different, launching a food startup with her sister. By exploring these options, she didn't just entertain fantasies, she surfaced themes that mattered most to her: impact, autonomy, and creativity. That insight led her to craft a hybrid role at her company, combining her tech skills with community outreach. It wasn't any one of the plans exactly, but it was deeply informed by all 3. Resilience also comes from building regular reflection into your work life. What's energizing you lately? What's draining you? What feels meaningful now that didn't a year ago? Checking in with yourself regularly allows for micro adjustments before burnout or stagnation take hold. Curiosity is your compass. The more you explore, ask questions, and stay open to feedback, the more resilient you become, not because nothing changes, but because you're prepared to change with it. You're not designing your career once. You're designing it continuously. And in that process, you not only create a work life that works, you create one that grows with you. Point 10. Conclusion. Work doesn't have to be something you endure or escape from. It can be something you design, intentionally, creatively, and continuously. That's the heart of this book, using design thinking not as a one-time fix, but as an ongoing approach to building a work life that evolves with you. It's a mindset, not a map. Throughout the journey, 3 ideas stand out as essential tools: curiosity, bias to action, and radical collaboration. Curiosity keeps you open. It turns frustration into questions, boredom into exploration, and fear into learning. Bias to action moves you from thinking to doing. Instead of waiting for clarity, you test, prototype, and gather feedback in the real world. And collaboration, especially radical collaboration, reminds you that you don't have to figure this out alone. The best designed lives are built with others. Designing your work life isn't about finding the perfect job. It's about creating space for purpose, growth, and satisfaction wherever you are, and adjusting when you're not. Sometimes that means reframing a challenge, sometimes it means crafting your current role, and sometimes it means choosing to leave and start again. All of these are valid moves in a well-designed life. To carry this forward, consider these journaling prompts. What parts of your work life feel most alive right now? Where are you tolerating, rather than designing? What small experiment could you run this month to test a new direction? Who can you invite into a conversation to explore what's possible? These aren't questions to answer once. They're check-ins to return to as your life and work evolve. Because no matter your title, industry, or stage of life, you always have the capacity to redesign. There's no finish line. No final version. Just a living design, shaped by choices made with intention. Keep building. Keep adjusting. Keep designing forward.